let's go ahead and get started. So in the ways of introduction, again, just backing up, David Corns leads Opendoor. He's the VP of marketing, and Justin Breton is the director of brand experiences and strategic partnerships at Walmart. So two amazing organizations. And within this panel, what we're going to cover is the trust timeline. Is there really a trust timeline? Is that linear? What does that look like? We're going to also talk about keeping trust through meaningful connections. Every single opportunity where brands engage with customers is an opportunity to build trust, but then it can potentially erode trust. So we're going to explore that a little bit as well. And then trust and innovation, raising the stakes for a new generation. Innovation is a requirement, it's not a luxury. So how do you innovate and then reach new audiences, change your products, but then also maintain that trust and use that to grow the trust? And then last but not least, we'll do some audience Q&A toward the very end. But again, feel free to simply ask questions throughout the entire discussion. So to start this conversation, I wanted to focus on a couple of quick points. Less than half, 47% specifically, of brands are seen as trustworthy. And 81% of customers consider trust to be a deciding factor in purchase decisions. On top of that, 84% of millennials don't trust traditional advertising. When you kind of look at these numbers, and David and Justin, we're going to explore this in a bit because I'd love to hear your thoughts on those statistics. But I think one of the really interesting things is we uncover a problem, right? Because we understand that if brands are not trustworthy, the consumers are not going to come and they're not going to purchase specifically. However, there's an opportunity if you have the ability to gain that trust and develop that trust through meaningful connections. And that's what we'd like to uncover in this conversation. So just simply looking at these statistics, I'd love to get your thoughts. David, happy to begin with you.
Cool, yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me, Anderson. I think, what stands out to me is actually the middle one, is 81% of consumers consider trust to be a deciding factor. I'm actually surprised that number isn't higher, because I think, more and more, there's an element of conscious capitalism, or you can spend your dollar on things that matter, and you also, we exist in a marketplace where there's many choices. So the fact that only 81% of consumers consider trust to be a deciding factor is surprising. But I think that trust probably breaks down differently depending on how much trust do I need to make a purchase decision for a candy bar versus how much trust do I need to make a purchase decision on, selling and buying a house. But obviously, with less than half being seen as trustworthy is obviously a huge opportunity to do it right. And I think there's elements that play out both with how you go to market and within marketing, delivering a brand purpose that is genuine, showing up in a way that is authentic, because authenticity is key to trustworthiness. And that means, the good and the bad, sharing work in progress brand. So I think there's a lot to unpack in here. But I think, the other way to look at it is, half the brands are doing it right, and consumers are obviously prioritizing trust, which is a positive thing for all marketers and all companies to aim towards.
Yeah, it's an excellent point in terms of whether it's a high involvement purchase decision or not. And Justin, would love to get an understanding from you about what these stats say about today's market.
Yeah, of course. Well, first, thank you for having me. And I'm so sorry to all of those of you that have joined today and unfortunately can't see me as they shared. I'm having some technical difficulties and my webcam's not working. But know that I threw a jacket on and I came today to impress all of you with hopefully some insightful thoughts and a nice jacket. But unfortunately, like I said, I'm unable to get my webcam to load. I think what's really interesting about this slide and the stat that really jumps out at me and excites me as I think about the work that my team does is this last stat around traditional advertising. And sitting on the brand experiences and partnerships team at Walmart, which is a small but mighty team on the broader, bigger brand marketing team, we're looking for ways to engage with customers in new, innovative, never been done, and I know that's such a cliche thing to say, formats that really help drive trust. So for example, our team oversees all brand-led shoppable live streams. We use live streams as a way to not only talk about the Walmart story through the lens of innovation and live content, but also talk about the quality of products that Walmart sells and show how those products can be used in the real world, which gives customers confidence to make that purchase online, which leads to trust. And so this idea that millennials don't trust traditional advertising, and that being such a high percentage point, I would imagine that Gen Z is similar in this sense of not looking at traditional advertising the way other generations have. And so to me, and you talked about that trust timeline, it's really, I think, also a timeline around innovation of like, how do we engage with people outside of the traditional ways that help drive that trust and also loyalty. And so I think, like David, all of your points were totally spot on. And I loved that you said, half of brands are doing it right and obviously have trust. And I think that that's a good outlook on these stats here. But I do think that there's always an opportunity to increase brand trust where you can. And again, looking for ways outside of the traditional to do so.
It's a great point. I'd love to, Anderson, I don't know if there's more details behind that third point, because when we say traditional advertising, what does it we mean? Are we talking about traditional media channels? Are we talking about the traditional way to market? Because even unpacking that becomes interesting, because we've seen, and on many brands I've worked with in the past, have seen some of the traditional media, be that mass market, TV, actually helps to increase trust, because certainly if you're a new model or a new brand, where you show up, who you advertise alongside also helps bring trust. So I think with everything to do with marketing, kind of how the data is sliced becomes really important. But I hear the point loud and clear, and I think for millennials and Gen Z, the less time in front of a television screen in the traditional sense is likely going to deter, when I think for some other audiences, actually being seen on a TV screen does help, be that broadcast or streaming. But it's an interesting stat, no doubt.
Yeah, and you highlighted a couple of really interesting points, both in terms of adjacency, who you are advertising alongside with, but then also the contextual relevancy of that advertising, and does it feel like it's a fit? Which kind of brings up the concept of authenticity and confidence is something that you were driving home as well, Justin. Any other things that you think matter tremendously as it relates to building brand trust, like aside from the confidence factor, engaging in new environments, doing it with a level of authenticity?
I'd add, like you just touched on it. It's trust is built. You can't buy trust, and trust is built over time. And I think the being authentic doesn't mean, being authentic doesn't mean avoiding negative emotions too. I mean, we've found a lot of success where we have talked about the pain of the traditional model of real estate and how that brings undue stress. And rather than shying away from that, we've actually, leaned into it because we're able to solve it. And that in itself brings a kind of, okay, you guys get it. Like, you know what we're going through and you're working to solve it. And that too, is both authentic because it's real, but it's also us being honest about the situation and the environment. So we're not selling this kind of idealistic dream that may not truly exist. We are instead sharing the reality of what it is like to sell and buy a home, the emotional strain that has, and doing it in a way that I think is resonating because it's honest and authentic. And by not shying away from that emotion, and showing various different scenarios in life, we're able to kind of connect more deeply to various target audience. And with that, I think that brings trust, because if you're a company that understands the pain and is working hard to solve it, you're going to build trust. And then I think from top of funnel marketing down is making sure that if that appears in the world to bring people to your product, make sure that product then delivers on that, and your sales and support team deliver on that. So there's a red line all the way through, because if anything breaks there, so the trust breaks down too. So I just think it's a good point looking at the prior slides, and I know we're looking at things through the lens of marketing, but like, it's built, not bought. So there isn't a silver bullet to go. If we buy this media, we're going to increase trust. It is, yes, there might be channels that may help with that, but the messaging needs to be honest and authentic and real, and then the experience that comes out of that needs to deliver on what you're promising.
Yeah, I love that you said.
New York.
Go ahead, Anderson.
No, by all means, Justin, continue.
I was just going to build, because I love the it's built, not bought, and you kind of like ended with the notion of you have to deliver on your brand promise, and I think that that's so important in driving trust. And so for a brand like Walmart, our brand promise is to help customers save money and live better. And from day one in the 1960s, when we were one Walmart store in Northwest Arkansas, our promise was to help customers save money and live better. As we expanded, we maintained that promise. And even today, we continue to help customers save money and live better. And so as we think about how we deliver on that, and how we as a brand scale with 4,000 plus stores, as we serve customers online at walmart.com through our Walmart app, that promise still needs to be true. And so what that means is, when we say we're going to deliver your walmart.com order in 2 days, it needs to be delivered in 2 days, because that's what's going to keep you coming back to walmart.com to order more paper towels, to order a free assembly sweater, whatever it may be. But by delivering on our core brand promise of helping you save money and live better, but then delivering on top of that these promises that are related more to the service that we're providing, that's helping maintain that trust as well. And so I think you always have to have an eye on what it is that you're promising to the customer, be it your brand promise, that North Star, or the services that help fulfill how people are engaging with your brand in the everyday. So online, it's delivery time. In stores, it's our Walmart associates. They're the ones that are the face of the brand. They're the ones that are engaging with customers. Believe it or not, there's an interesting stat that local communities actually trust their Walmart associates to give them product advice, because they're their neighbors. They are their kids' friends' parents. And so trust comes through that brand promise, but also the services that really help fill the service you're providing to your constituents and people.
Yeah, I love the fact that you both agree on this, because one of the things I want to make sure is not lost on our audience is that you are all from two very completely different organizations and industries, right? In addition to that, in terms of when they were born, Opendoor started in 2014 with the idea to revolutionize and change the real estate industry. Walmart, Justin, as you stated, started in 1962 with one store. So whether this is a legacy organization or something that's new with high involvement, kind of a high emotion decision in terms of selling and buying a house and all the nuances that go around it, right? From moving to, you guys do a great job of detailing that in your commercial. But I was thinking about it, like making new dad friends at my age, right? I've got to go to the park and employ my kindergarten skills to make new friends. All that emotion is kind of tied into it. And the idea of getting back to trust, and then also making sure from a financial perspective, you're spending your money in the most appropriate manner possible is incredibly important. One thing I want to close out this particular topic with is, when is the appropriate time to start building that trust? And I want to be clear, we're not marketing to children, right? That's not the point. But ultimately, when is the right time? Because as both of you sort of navigate and talk through innovations, there's kind of an interesting I guess, point of inflection where you're actually able to reach out and touch base with folks and then communicate the product benefits and start building that trust. So quickly, if you can expound on that, that would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, happy to. You know, the interesting thing about Opendoor is obviously we are a company and a brand that is disrupting what is a $2.3 trillion industry that is essentially unchanged, really unchanged in about 100, you know, over 100 years, with it, which is the means in which you can buy and sell a home. And we believe in making that process simple, certain, and fast. So the stress, you know, the majority of people move homes not because they want a white picket fence or a bigger house. They move house because they have a life transition. They have a baby, they get a dog and realize they need more space. They're downsizing because the kids are going off to college. You name it. It's the life transition that actually leads to the need to move. And then, you know, life transitions are stressful, and moving house becomes one of the most stressful things in the middle of that. I think it is actually up there with getting a divorce, losing a loved one. It's like one of the most stressful things you can do. So we're working hard to make what is a very long, tiresome, and stressful process simple, certain, fast, and easy. And because of that, we're able to talk about those emotions, as I mentioned before. And Anderson, you just talked about in our traded spot, this notion of like making new dad friends and kind of like owning those moments. Well, the reality is people don't move often. It's usually every 7 to 10 years. So the question, if I unpack it, is like, you know, if people are only moving every 7 to 10 years, do we need to be advertising and marketing to people, you know, daily, weekly? Do we need to be getting aided awareness up constantly? And the answer is, yes to the above, because building an iconic and trusted brand takes time. And you also want to be relevant and known, so when the time is right for somebody, they come directly to you. And I think, you know, I often make the comparison to insurance. You don't need insurance every day, but you know that when it's time to get new car insurance or house insurance, you know that Geico is an option. And that is because Geico have been there daily, weekly, communicating their message and making it known that they're available. And I think too, given the move is every 7 to 10 years, you know, that is we're able to have a lot of empathy for people that do that, because we're managing those transactions every day. And I think that ties back to all of the touch points mattering. So I think to answer the question, you know, trust is built, as we've talked about, can't be bought. It grows over time. And so you've got to start immediately, and you've got to continually be working on it in order to have the awareness and be front of mind for people when it's time for them to interact with your brand. But really curious to hear what Justin has to say with Walmart, because obviously there's so many reasons to go, and in their purpose, you know, is very much about daily activity.
Yeah, no, I mean, you know, I think one of the things, we didn't really talk about this, but I think it's really important as it relates to brand trust is brand perception. And how do you ensure that what people think of your brand is not always accurate, right? So people might think the goods at Walmart, because they are priced low, that they're not high quality, but that's actually not the case. And so we have to educate customers that we actually have a great assortment of high quality products that are low priced, because we're delivering on our brand promise. Again, our brand promise being saving money to help you live better. And so for us, I think we're constantly looking at opportunities to shift perception that then translates into brand trust, and hopefully over time, brand favorability and brand loyalty, as we think about the landscape of retailers, both in the real world, but also online, and any options that people have to buy goods, like I mentioned earlier, paper towels or sweaters. And so for us, as it relates to brand trust, you know, it's first and foremost like delivering on that promise, but also like looking for opportunities specifically as it relates to the work that my team does that are unexpected, in that we're engaging with an audience on a platform that they're already on. So for example, with shoppable live streams, we had one last night, was hosted by Busy Phillips. We went live on YouTube and Facebook, and we are simulcasting that experience on both platforms in real time and connecting with consumers that are on those platforms and giving them an opportunity to watch this engaging content, to see these quality products, and to shop natively. So really meeting customers where they are online and making it super easy and seamless for them to engage with us and shop. And hopefully through the lens of having a celebrity showcase these products, to talk about the quality of these products, to see them being demoed, it leads or shifts at least that perception that leads to trust. With the metaverse and thinking about connecting with younger audiences, again, it's a similar approach, which is how do we show up on platforms where audiences are, and how do we do something that feels authentic and feels not overtly commercial, but engages with them in a way that feels additive to where they are, that again leads to a shift in perception and over time trust. And so for us as a big brand that has a lot of negative perception around it, we are constantly looking for opportunities to change that perception and really showcase the good that we're doing in communities around the country, how we're delivering on our promise, how we have that high quality assortment of goods that hopefully gets people to trust us in a more long-term fashion.
Yeah, Justin, you said a mouthful recently. One, I think what you honed in on is the idea that 84% of millennials who don't trust traditional advertising, you're finding different ways to advertise or promote. The other thing is you also talked a little bit about social responsibility, and that's kind of the next section I wanted to explore. But we talked about the meaningful connections. But in terms of social responsibility and maintaining brand trust, um, talk a little bit about that a bit more, right? We know that it's buzzworthy, but it's not just buzzworthy, it's the right thing to do. So talk a little bit about how you leverage that. David or Justin, feel free to start.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in and answer this one first. I think Walmart as an organization, given its physical footprint in the United States, plays a really critical role in the communities that they are a part of, or we are a part of. And I think that often goes overlooked. And so Walmart as an organization is for communities and really does do a lot to give back where we have a physical footprint. When there are unfortunate natural disasters that happen across the country, Walmart certainly steps up and contributes in a way that is for the community to make sure that they can get up on their feet, and hopefully with time recover. But outside of the community piece, the organization is doing a lot with DE&I and has a great not only internal strategy to make people feel included and feel represented all the way up to the top, but also has a clear strategy in place to make sure that customers also feel seen and heard and represented in the work that we're doing. Our Chief Marketing Officer, William White, is very passionate about DE&I and has done a lot of work to ensure that the marketing team is always thinking about DE&I and has really put great practices in place to ensure that anytime we do any level of marketing, there's an internal team that's reviewing it and saying, like, you know what, maybe we shouldn't include that because it just doesn't feel right, or maybe we should look to include somebody that maybe falls outside the traditional lens of what people think about as it relates to DE&I. So again, our customers feel seen and heard and represented in the work that we're doing. And so I think like social responsibility is incredibly important from the community level to the DE&I level, and of course all the other work that's happening across the organization to really ensure that like Walmart is giving back in a way like it can, given its scale, that feels truly additive to the world that we share together. Which I think often goes overlooked, but is worth mentioning today. And I appreciate the question. And I'm sure, David, you have great localized efforts and national efforts that you guys are working on as well.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I love the point on the DE&I front. I mean, we've been working very hard in our marketing to always ensure that we're representing the beautiful tapestry that is America, both in front of the camera and behind the camera. So that is including, directors that are shooting our commercials and making sure that we're keeping that front of mind, because it's a real reflection of who we are. I also think from touching on the national and local level, it's like, how do we build, coming from, obviously a much younger brand, Opendoor versus Walmart, which is a very established brand. How do we build a national presence and trust? But also, how do we become part of the community at a local level? Which, some of the things we've been doing there is obviously a partnership with TeamSnap on field, where we're sponsoring some local youth teams and being part of the community and helping the community there. We've also been working on some initiatives with our yard signs of how can we use the real estate that is our yard signs as a way to give back to communities. So some early work happening there, more to come, both as easy as helping to give back on Halloween with full-size candy bars to kids that are trick-or-treating, all the way through to some recent work for St. Patrick's Day, and more to come there. So always looking for ways to do our part and be a trusted and true part of the community as we build national scale.
Yeah, I think what you both are saying is tremendously powerful, right? Starting with those local communities first and then growing the scale. Because as we know, Walmart's in every single community, and the fact that you're giving back, but then also understanding that those home sales and those transactions are definitely uniquely personal, right? And it starts one person, one buyer at a time. With that, you're collecting a lot of customer sentiment and a lot of feedback along the way. Would love to just kind of understand from you, as you go about innovating and building a brand and building on that trust, how do you go about collecting that feedback? And then also, how do you act on that feedback to create and create better products, and then also foster deeper trust and relationships with your consumers?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, feedback from our consumers is constant. We actually make sure as a leadership team that we talk to our customers regularly and listen to calls from our customers regularly to ensure that we're tracking, like, what are we doing that's working, but more importantly, hearing from real customers on pulling out insights on how we can improve our products, our services, you name it. So I would argue from a marketing standpoint, it's like consumers can tell you where you've been and where you are, not necessarily where you need to go, but hearing from them on their experience interacting with the company is always really insightful to help guide what we should do next. From a kind of tracking standpoint, we keep our eye closely on brand health trackers, so keeping the big picture in mind on how awareness is growing and how trustworthiness is growing, and seeing those metrics both tick up quite considerably in the right direction with a lot of our initiatives, and then also keeping an idea, close eye on real-time business performance, because I think with something as personal as a house, selling or buying, that's a really good indication of if what you're doing and what you're saying is resonating. So I think, like, making data your love language so you can adjust plans accordingly is really important. On top of that, one thing we do as a company is we actually have kind of all of our large meetings, we have start and end with a customer, which is either a quote or video, where we kind of show the lives we've helped change at an emotional level and hear from them about their ease. We've brought in customers as panelists to talk about the experience of buying and selling with Opendoor, which again is just hugely important to recognize the role you're having in people's lives, so you can garner those insights to both improve the product and improve the marketing.
Making data your love language, David. Oh my gosh, I'm going to use that moving forward. And I feel like my language with data is not love. It's certainly an area. Yeah, it's certainly an area that
It's built.
Yeah, will need to improve. But I think similar to what you shared in terms of how you're tracking brand trust and perception and loyalty, like we too have internal trackers, and there's a whole team who probably loves data more than I do, that is tracking it like on a daily basis and is sharing out monthly and quarterly summaries that help us understand sort of like how we're tracking up or down, month over month, quarter over quarter. And it's really interesting because in addition to the quantitative data that helps say where we're at across these key metrics, there's also qualitative data that we're getting directly from customers that's really helping power some of the changes that are happening in real time. I think what's so interesting about a brand at Walmart is that brand perception, brand trust, favorability, there are so many things happening across the country that are coming out of Walmart, whether it be things out of my team, media campaigns, TV commercials, things happening in the political spectrum that in some way Walmart gets looped into, and it has a pretty drastic effect on the brand. And so it's hard to sort of, with our brand, pinpoint what it is that's helping shift us up or down across these metrics, which is why I think the qualitative data is always so helpful in really understanding like how we're progressing as a brand and how we're driving brand trust and favorability among customers. But I think as it relates to my team and the work that we're doing, we're always looking for opportunities to measure brand trust, perception, preference, against the things that we're activating against. So we can say with confidence, like, this worked, this didn't work. How do we use these learnings to inform a future strategy? How do we optimize what we're already doing so that at the end of the day, we can say with confidence that we're doing work that is actually helping move that needle in the right direction? Again, knowing that even some of the biggest things that are coming out of my team might have a really small impact on this bigger tracker against the full Walmart brand because of just everything that's happening across the organization in the country and Walmart's penetration among all communities. But I do think it's important to set goals, build a learning agenda, and ensure that you are tracking against those goals and that learning agenda with everything you do, so that you can say again with confidence that the work that you're doing is helping achieve higher brand trust, higher brand preference month over month, campaign to campaign.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And one of the things that I always say as a parent, I think, tell your kids trust is a two-way street. And part of what you all are doing is you're trusting their consumers to tell you and provide feedback on what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. And the other side of it is obviously once you're told, then you will execute in order to build a better product and be able to engage with those consumers in meaningful ways. I know we're kind of getting a little bit close to time here, so I wanted just to end off on one quick question before I take some audience questions. In terms of any brands, I would love to hear from you, other brands that are doing that, going through that trust building process and doing it the right way. Would love to hear from both of you to get your perspectives on which brands you love that you're seeing out in the marketplace. As marketers, I'm sure you're kind of paying attention to what's happening in and outside of your industry. So would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, I think many brands that have stood the test of time have figured out how to build trust and continue to respect that trust to stand the test of time. It's funny when you ask the question about emerging brands, it's like anything Ryan Reynolds is involved in, I think, is doing a really good job with building trust. And I think part of that is his involvement is with brands that he is involving his celebrity in a very authentic and honest way. in most cases, he's disrupting very traditional and well-established categories, and is doing it with a clear strategy on giving back or giving something good to consumers, and then the creative execution of how he brings that to life, with himself as the front man, I think is proven out to be very good from a business perspective. I think it's being very good from a marketing perspective, and I think we'll actually, see more of that kind of work to come. So maybe a cheat, because I haven't mentioned a brand per se, but I think we all know the brands he's involved in. But I think finding authentic and honest ways to disrupt marketplaces is what we are hired to do. And I think the teams that have brought Ryan Reynolds on are doing an exceptional job doing that.
Yeah, and I'm gonna give a legacy brand that I as a consumer trust and also trust their marketing, and that's Nike. I think that Nike really delivers on their brand promise, and I love that they allow consumers to think of themselves as an athlete, regardless of if they're an athlete or not. And I think that is really powerful, and I think that for them has helped translate who they are as a brand into brand trust. And as they think about innovation and showing up in new ways, it's driving even more engagement with their brand and even more trust among consumers, many of whom have probably already engaged with Nike, but possibly some that haven't, that are unexpectedly delighted by how Nike is showing up in the metaverse or through content or through spokespeople, and it's leading to brand trust. And I think so Nike does a really good job, in my opinion, of building trust and maintaining that trust over time among consumers that are shopping and engaging with their brand.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, because there's always room to grow, right? And the idea of turning a fan into a super fan is something that we talk a lot about here at TeamSnap. And that is an opportunity to drive that fandom even further, so then it becomes emphatic, something that's earned, something that is distributed through word of mouth. So it really kind of goes beyond just being loyal to a particular brand. Shifting to focus on some questions from the audience, we have one really super interesting question to start off with, and it's, what are the short-term and long-term ramifications of brands leading with trust-centric brand messaging, but delivers an experience that's contrary to the messaging itself? So you're leading with trust, but then that experience doesn't communicate or resonate that there is something trustworthy about that brand.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's a caution, because there's nothing worse than setting something up as one thing and then delivering something else. I think that goes back to something both Justin and I have talked about, is being clear on what your purpose is. Because I think if you're clear on your purpose and how you're working every day to deliver against that, I think consumers can give you the benefit of the doubt where needed. I also think it goes back to authenticity and honesty too. If there are areas that you're falling down, I think it's okay to be a work in progress brand, as long as you recognize where you're falling down, and have comms ready for consumers to make sure they know you're working on it and you hear them. But I think again, to the trust is built, not bought. How you respond in moments where you may underdeliver matters as much as how you set up that you will deliver, because ultimately those things, you can gain more trust from fixing a problem because you've heard it and you've taken it seriously, than you can from just kind of doing things 10 out of 10 every time, because no company is perfect and no human being is perfect. So areas like this can occur.
Yeah, I think everything you said is totally spot on. And I think as we think about our space, specifically one of the areas that my team contributes across the organization with live streams, is when we did our first live stream in December of 2020, we were the first major brand to go live on TikTok. So there was a lot of risk that came with that. And with that live stream, we decided to basically do a pre-recorded experience. So it was almost like live to tape, where it felt or looked as though it was live, but it wasn't. And we kind of got roasted. So people in the comments were like, this isn't live, this isn't live, this isn't live. And there was no way for us to, in that moment, sort of course correct, because a decision had been made. And so as you fast forward to our live stream last night, we made the decision to do the live stream in a studio. It's all about spring. Obviously, weather conditions across the country are hit or miss right now. And so it was a decision to create a space that looked as though we were in someone's backyard. But at the top of the live stream, we panned out and showed that we were in a studio, to really lean into authenticity and trust and say, like, it looks like we're in someone's backyard, but we're actually in a studio in Brooklyn because weather's crazy. And there wasn't a single negative comment in the chat around it feeling not authentic, because we just leaned into being truthful to people that were tuning in to watch and engage, and it drove really great results. And so I think if you take things on head first and are honest with what it is that you're hoping to achieve, I think the results will come, but you also have to deliver on that authenticity and trust in the right way.
Awesome. One more question, because I know we're getting low on time, but I think this is a really important question as well. How do you get leadership bought into the importance of brand trust and its correlation to more measurable KPIs? So we obviously want to measure the campaign results, but trust is so important and it needs to be built over time. But you need to be able to earn that, and you need the full organization support behind it.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think my team have been working hard to do in partnership with our marketing sciences group, our data science team, is show the correlation between certain things. So there's a correlation between aided awareness and conversion, and within that there's a consideration period. And the greater your trustworthiness goes, often the greater awareness is and the greater consideration is. So just kind of drawing those connections, those data points together, easier said than done, but like investing the time to crack it with a group of people that think diversely and differently, so you can pressure check your own bias. I think is really helpful. But I also think there's just something intuitive about it too. People know that they spend time with people they trust, and I think that's the same as brands. You like people you trust, you like brands you trust. So I think there's an element of intuition in there, and then I think it's kind of proving out that data as you go to make a really clear correlation. And there certainly is a very clear correlation from what we see.
Yeah, and I'll just add one quick point, being mindful of time. Internally at Walmart, like one of the things that we use, specifically my team, as it relates to getting leadership buy-in, is this idea of a learning agenda. We're doing a lot in spaces that have kind of been uncharted and don't have historical data to say this will help drive trust, or this will drive this KPI. And so we put together a learning agenda to help leadership understand that, like, this is how we're approaching this particular opportunity. These are the types of things that we want to learn. These are the types of KPIs we're measuring against. These are the partners that we're bringing on board to help measure against those KPIs. Some of those might be brand trust, might be brand perception. But that learning agenda, I think, gives them confidence to know that we know that this is something that we are learning as we go, but we'll optimize and perfect over time to give customers a more elevated, heightened experience in a way that's meaningful, that drives that trust. And so that learning agenda piece, I think, for internal buy-in has been really successful for my team. It's something that we use for all activations and campaigns, and I encourage other marketers who are exploring new territories or launching new campaigns to outline that learning agenda to help with internal buy-in.
Thank you so much for that, Justin. And on that note, I think we are at time and we're going to wrap up. But first and foremost, I would like to thank everyone for participating and then also listening to this riveting conversation as it relates to brand trust. I'd also love to thank Justin and David for sharing their insights, again, approaching it from two completely different organizations with different sort of time spans in terms of Walmart being a legacy organization, looking to innovate and constantly looking to disrupt, and then Opendoor being a newer organization that is looking to build trust, but then also looking to innovate in a very stagnant industry. So learned a ton from both of you and really appreciate your time and your perspectives. Just as a reminder, the recording for this session will be delivered to the emails that you registered with. So you'll have all that great content that you can play back and share and disseminate. And thank you again for your time. Really appreciate it. Again, my name is Anderson David from TeamSnap. We participated and had a great time in this conversation and really just love the opportunity to sit down and talk with both of you. Justin, sorry about the web camera not working out. Would have loved to see your blazer, but I'm sure it looks fantastic. But thank you both for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us. It was fun.
Thank
No
you.
worries. Take care.
Bye.
Yeah.